Hey guys, Hearthstone World Championships are today. Hope you've been enjoying that. I have too. And with the World Championships actually came the Hearthstone Esports 2022 announcement. So they went over all of their plans for what they're going to do with Hearthstone Esports in the new year. And most of it's really exciting. So they kept the same prize pool, $3 million, quite a bit. And they diverted 500,000 of it to Battlegrounds, which I think is a great idea. Battlegrounds, super competitive, a lot of players who deserve the chance to compete in events, and all of that's really exciting, but it shouldn't surprise you that there was literally $0 of 3 million diverted to Wild. Wild got literally nothing yet again, so it's been since 2019, we haven't had a Wild Open, and that 2019 Wild Open was at the start of the year, so it was more of like a 2018 thing, so realistically, it's been 3 to 4 years, depending on how you count it, since there was any Wild event sanctioned by Blizzard whatsoever. And that's pretty frustrating. So today, I'm going to make some recommendations. I'm going to talk about the system they have in place, and I'm going to suggest some things that they could reasonably do to promote a healthy, competitive Wild scene. And it's nothing crazy. This is stuff they can actually do. And of course, I'll give a wish list, but I'm also going to make some reasonable recommendations. Okay, so the first thing that we need to establish is that you could not host an entertaining Wild event today. You couldn't do it, and the reason for that is twofold. One, Wild is not balanced, so Wild has huge problems, which would lead to really unfun and uninteresting tournaments in the current meta. Because of Pirate Warrior and Odd Hunter specifically, two of the top decks basically uncounterable. They are individually counterable, but they're not counterable together. So it means any Conquest lineup basically has to run both of them. And of course, your third and fourth decks are optional. There's plenty of things you could play there. Most people are going to play a Combo Mage and Ignite Mage of some sort. And yeah, so you have basically one option or two options if you want to go crazy. And yeah, seeing the same decks over and over again is not really interesting. Seeing people play Pirate Warrior and Odd Hunter mirrors is not interesting, and until they basically ban those quest lines, I wouldn't want to watch a Wild tournament, because it's nothing that you don't already see on ladder. Wild has a lot of interesting tech options, a lot of crazy decks you can play that counter other decks, but if everyone brings the same thing, it's not interesting. You've seen it in Standard before, really late in metas, where every single lineup is basically the exact same deck, and yeah, nobody gives a shit about it when they do that, so I don't think that they could host a tournament right now for that reason, and the other reason is cheating. So I actually posted a tweet recently. You can go look at my Twitter and view exactly what it looks like. You can also go to Corbett's Twitter and view what it looks like from the cheater's perspective. Blizzard hasn't banned many cheaters at all. They banned a couple, but basically none of the high-profile and winningest cheaters have been banned. They continue to do it on ladder, and if this were in a tournament, yeah, you could imagine why cheating would be a problem, because unless they have the ability to stop them ahead of time, detect it in real time, or really just acknowledge that it's a problem and it's more pervasive than just single individuals here and there, really until cheating is tackled in general, I wouldn't host a tournament, because it's just going to expose how bad the cheating problem is, especially when money's on the line, and when Blizzard basically has a negligible or almost non-existent track record of banning these cheaters. It's reasonable to assume that they would try and probably get away with it in a tournament, and that would leave a sour taste in everybody's mouth. Okay, but let's assume that they fix the meta and that they fix the cheating problem. So what would I recommend that they do? If I was put in charge of this $3 million prize pool for Hearthstone Esports, and assuming that's inflexible, that they can't add any money to the pool for Wild, what I would have done personally is I would have give $250,000 to Wild. Yeah, that's a significant amount, but it's only 8% of the total prize pool, and it's fair to say that more than 8% of the Hearthstone player base actually plays Wild. In China, I believe more people play Wild than Standard, so 8% is not crazy, but you could easily have or fifth that figure if you wanted to, down to 125 or 50,000 total. And what I would do is I would have 3 Masters Tour type tournaments or 3 Wild Open type tournaments with 1 Wild World Championship. All of these figures that I've given are easily divisible in such a way that you could allocate prizes to each of these tournaments and then give a big prize at the end for the World Championship. It'd be super interesting. It would be pretty easy to run, honestly, because there are plenty of people that would love to cast these things. Operating Wild tournaments is actually not that difficult. There's plenty of software and really tournaments generally run quite smoothly with a couple casters, a couple admins, nothing too expensive, and a reasonable prize pool that would encourage people to try hard and attempt to win. Okay, but realistically, they are not going to do that. That's way too much money, that's way too much effort, and they've already set their plans for 2022. So I'm going to give some more reasonable recommendations for what I think they could actually get done, what they could actually implement, and would satisfy the wild player base entirely. So in the past, they've run Wild Opens just on a yearly basis, which involve ladder qualification and either an in-person or an online finals. And I think there's no reason why they couldn't do a couple of these a year, or let alone just one. It's been 3 or 4 years since they did this. The prize money is absolutely there. I don't think standard players would see 10K, 30K missing from their prize pool. I mean, keep in mind, we're talking about, I think that's 0.1 to 0.3% of the overall prize pool for a game mode that objectively probably gets like 10% of the player base. I think it's pretty fair to say that Wild could fairly be attributed 0.1 to 0.3% of the prize pool for an esport that's objectively quite interesting and has a lot more options open in a balanced meta than Standard does. So my recommendation would be just one Wild Open for 2022. It's totally doable. The community could help organize it in a number of ways. Blizzard just has to put up a little bit of money. And people will probably point out, they'll say, Jack, there's been plenty of community tournaments that are essentially replacements for the Wild Open. And that's true, but the prize pools for those things suck. So if you have a regular job and you have to take off Friday, and then you have to spend all of your Saturday and maybe part of your Sunday to play in these tournaments because of how big they are, usually first place pays, I think historically, like 100 to maybe $500. I don't think any of them have paid 500 for first, but even if they did, literally 3 days to get basically your money back for the time for the top prizes is ridiculous. People will play in those types of tournaments anyway. I have, and it was really fun. But if you wanted to do a Blizzard sanction one, put up 10K, put up 20K, just do it once a year. You could put up 30K once a year. Again, 0.3% of the prize pool. I think that's totally reasonable. It's easy to do. And again, the organization could be done by the community. And also, if Blizzard, they say, okay, we have 3 million, we've already allocated it, and 0.3% extra is not within the budget. First of all, that's ridiculous and stingy and really what I would expect out of Blizzard. But if they said that, then what you could do is you could actually fund a Wild Open through a percentage of Wild Pack sales. So right now, it doesn't make sense to buy Wild Packs because they suck. 99% of Wild cards are absolute trash. They're dog shit. They're not playable. They're just dust. But people buy them anyway. And if you said, okay, if you buy these packs, a percentage of it is going to go to a Wild Open, people are going to buy the shit out of those packs. They're going to revitalize this product that sees no sales. This is a precedent that they've already established. They used it to fund a Masters tour, and I believe it was basically instantly funded. So you set a much smaller target, you revitalize a product that has basically no interest, and you create a lot of community goodwill because people want a Wild Open, and it'll say, hey, we're not, Wild isn't our main focus, but we know you exist, and here's something, here's just something. So to review all of the things that I'm suggesting, first, they need to balance Wild. Specifically, the only things they need to do, and I promise this will fix the problem, is they need to ban the Hunter questline and ban the Warrior questline. If they nerf it, that's probably fine too. I think that would tick down the power level to make it more equal with other decks. I've heard Ixar say before that they don't want to tick down the top power level deck because there will be a new bad guy. But think about it this way. This is how I view it. If there was a deck that had a 100% win rate, every time you queued it, you instantly won the game. If you queued against it, you instantly lost. And then there was the rest of the meta, like the current meta the way it is. If you tick down that, it would make the meta better, even if there's a new top dog. Okay? And this is basically the plane that these decks I'm speaking about already operate on. No, they're not instant wins, but against a lot of decks, they are instant wins. And against a lot of others, they're basically instant wins. So the meta would just be more interesting. There'd be a lot more decks on an even or similar playing field. And yeah, there might be a new top dog. There probably would be, but the top dog would be more counterable, more closer to the power level of other decks, which are playable, and that would make a much more interesting both ladder and tournament meta. Okay, so 1, they need to balance the game. 2, they need to ban cheaters. No one is against banning cheaters. This is an easy W for Blizzard. I don't know what it's going to take for them to do it, but they need to do this. And then 3, they just need to do something, like just literally anything, any tournament that is Blizzard sponsored and has some amount of money put towards it. You can get community casters, you can get community admins, but we just need a little bit of money and that official Blizzard stamp to say, hey, we acknowledge that Wild exists, we're supporting it in this small fashion, and maybe there'll be more in the future. And that would make me really happy. I think I told the HS Esports guys on Twitter that I was going to make this video, so hopefully they're seeing this, and hopefully they made it to the end. And if you're watching this, look down in the comments and see what people think about this. These are the dedicated Wild players. These are the people who would either watch the tournament or be in it, I promise you, like every single one of them. And see what they think about this idea. See if they think that it's adequate. See if they agree with me. And yeah, these are the more dedicated people, the people who are like at the top of ladder, people who are gonna watch these tournaments. But with that being said, like those are the people who are buying a lot of packs too, you know. These are people that you probably want to make happy because they're setting the tone for what other people might think about Wild. And yeah, that went a little longer than I wanted it to, but I really wanted to make sure that I explained all of my points and gave great suggestions, and hopefully this is something that they can do. And, you know, honestly, if they can't make it happen for 2022, because I understand these things are planned way in advance, then saying, hey, this is something that we can do for 23, and we're interested in doing it, and we're making plans for it, shit, that would go a long way, even though it's going to be like 12 months before it happens, or longer. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully they listen, and yeah, we'll see what happens.